Hello.
Hello. Salutations.
Solitude and salutations coming at you from Los Angeles, California.
Neither one of us are in Los Angeles, California.
We are officially the
We're in
county.
Los Angeles County.
Yes, we are in the county. I'm in Long Beach. Michael's in Alhambra.
Don't Alhambra.
Alhambra.
Just any city that started with an A, huh?
What city is it? Altadena? What city is it?
Wrong again.
What
But you're
city
good
is
with
it?
these A cities. It's Arcadia.
Ah, dang it. So close. At any rate, we're in Los Angeles County.
Don't ever greet me from the wrong city again. Look out
Michael's
your window.
very sassy this morning.
I am.
I'm going to look out my window and it is a beautiful sunny day. I'm going to gloat because it was literally snowing in Minnesota the other day. I know this because I chatted with my friends last night. And I have been thinking about possibly moving back there, especially because I have two huskies. And I'm like, oh, they're snow dogs. Like I should be in the snow. And then they were like, it's snowing and it's almost May. And I was like, ooh, yeah, there's that.
Well, it's supposed to be 100 degrees here in 2 days. So,
Yeah, and that's no good either.
yeah,
So,
that's no bueno. Minnesota sucks.
speaking of your favorite news, have they talked any more about the Chauvin trial now that it's over?
They talked a lot about the Chauvin trial now that it's
And
over.
what did they say?
It's actually pretty interesting because I've been trying to not watch the news per somebody I know's advice, but I had to watch the news for a couple of
What?
days. Yeah. I did. I found once you told me that the news was so like bogus, I found that as I watched it, I felt drained. Um, and some of that could just be you and how persistent you are with making me do these podcasts with you. But anyway, I'm just kidding. As far as the Chauvin trial goes, it's covered. There's three different perspectives. There's Fox News, there's CNN, and then there's just average everyday Black people. CNN, of course, is super excited and they're just happy that the world is so just for Black people now because one person got convicted for killing one Black person. Fox is basically like the only reason Chauvin got convicted is because the jurors were scared of what would happen if they didn't convict him. Like they couldn't just see the video of a man being murdered and be like, well, that's wrong. He's guilty. And then everyday average Black people are pretty much saying, you know what? I don't know why everyone thinks this is justice. This is one person, in it's a good thing. Yes. I mean, I haven't heard anyone say that it's not a good thing, but to equate it with somehow righting all the wrongs is ridiculous. And that's the side that I fall on, especially when and again, you don't watch the news and I watch the news sort of now.
But you're trying not to watch the news.
Yeah, there's been literally like 4 or 5, 3 or 4 killings of Blacks at the hands of police since the verdict. And the verdict was what was it, like last Friday or something, Thursday or Friday, somewhere in there, maybe Wednesday, I can't remember. But anyway, and there's this one now in, I want to say, North Carolina. I think his name is Anthony Wright. I mean, everyone who's seen this video, and I haven't because they haven't released it, basically says this guy was executed in his car by a number of police that were there to serve a warrant. And his attorney, his family attorneys, and the people who have been allowed to see the video have expressed that his hands were on the steering wheel, and you can clearly see his hands were on the steering wheel, and they essentially just come up to the car and start blasting. And the funny thing is, they were there to serve a warrant for drug, possession and selling and all that good stuff. And they didn't find any drugs or guns in the car or the house in which they came to serve the warrant on. So even if they hadn't killed him, they came to serve a warrant for something that, at least in that moment in time, didn't even justify the warrant itself because they found nothing. So it would have been a huge waste of manpower and man hours and taxpayer money just to send all those police there to find nothing. And they executed a gentleman while he was sitting in his car. So yeah, that's the state of America right now, Nicole Jurgens.
That situation is seriously disturbing and sad. But do you think that it is helpful that we now have these cameras and so that we can actually see what's happening and so that we can make the change? I feel like before the cameras, it was just a lot of talk like, oh yeah, they killed a black person, but then there's all these excuses. Oh, probably they, had drugs, or probably right now when we have cameras and you can clearly see what's happening, do you think maybe this will be what starts the change? And I know we've had cameras for a while, but we haven't been showing these things on the news. We haven't been talking about, we haven't really even been privy to the cameras, even though I believe we've had them for a decade. I mean, how long have cops had the cameras on them?
The body worn cameras are probably, I would say, a 5-year phenomenon. They've probably been around about 5 years or so. But I have to disagree with you that we have seen this. We've seen dashboard cameras, which have been around forever. We can go all the way back to Rodney King and what was that, like 91? I mean,
They had cameras back then?
The cops, or just in general?
The cops.
I mean, the cops probably not. I mean, that was probably more just people who happened to have a camera on. Like, again, in the case of Rodney King, a person across the street from the happening happened to see what was going on and picked up one of those, huge VHS video recorders. Yeah, right. And started recording. So we would have. So funny enough, and I'm going to answer your question, but funny enough, if we hadn't seen that video, he would have just been another dude that got his ass whooped by the LAPD, which went on all the time. My family is from Los Angeles and from the rougher parts of Los Angeles, like Watts, which especially 30 years ago was just like, could have easily been the roughest city in America, let alone just California. At any rate, we saw that video, and that still didn't persuade 12 men and women to say, well, maybe 8 officers hitting a guy with a nightstick who doesn't have a weapon may be excessive. And they still let each one of them go with zero charges. And even up to today, when you look at George Floyd, and that video is just like, as clear as me looking at you right now, the defense was, oh, this guy was high, and this guy had a drug problem, and this guy was resisting. And he almost literally said in his closing arguments, this is the defense attorney, don't believe what you see, because there's so much else going on besides what you see. So don't actually pay attention to the knee on the neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. No, the guy had a enlarged heart, and he had heart troubles, and he had hypertension. And so I guess what they're trying to get us to believe is that George Floyd was going to die at that day, in that moment, in time, just walking to his car to drive home from the grocery store. Okay, so now to answer your question, no, video doesn't seem to do much for justice. I think people just have it in them. Either they feel like all police officers can do no wrong. And typically when people say, in my opinion, when people have that opinion of police officers, it's usually geared towards Black and brown people. Police officers can do no wrong. But if I'm Joe White guy married to Susie White guy, and we have a son who's Billy White guy, and they beat his ass, oh, no. Are you kidding me? Like, the cop was out of control. There's a video that just came out, and it's probably, I don't know, it's probably a couple months old. So it's very recent. This white guy, I don't remember the state, I don't remember the circumstances, it really doesn't matter. But this white guy literally has a knife and stabs the officer in his neck and turns around and runs. The officer ran up to him and tased him. So it seems like it's only for us that deadly force is always the option, not the last option. Not we've exhausted tasers, we've exhausted pepper spray, we've exhausted 8 guys being on us, like they were on Eric Garner and choked him out in New York a couple years ago. It's like immediately, let's draw the guns and just empty the clips into these people. It's so incredibly frustrating, and that's what they led the news with this morning, was about the guy who got shot in his car that I was telling you about. And I think in large part that's why I was just like drained. Like, I gotta stop watching the news, even though honestly I feel like not watching the news for me is just, in a sense, putting my head in the sand. I just, you know, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a good day to be everyday average black guy in America. And I am certainly everyday average black guy. I'm not rich, I'm not famous, I'm not athlete or celebrity. I'm just a guy with a wife and 3 kids trying to make it every day. And it's almost like good luck and fortune keeps me from, having these types of run-ins with police officers. So forgive me if I sound a bit jaded right now.
You don't. And it makes me sad to hear that. And I don't know, you said, people think that it's okay for cops to use this deadly force. I don't know anybody who thinks that's okay. I personally believe that those people that we give the power to protect and serve us should be more accountable than us, should be better than us, right? They should work harder to do better than us. And I think we've lost sight of that. And I think maybe what's good about these videos, as sad as they are, is bringing that to a head. And finally, for once, one cop is going to jail, right? This is the first.
So let me stop you real quick. Let me interrupt you. Sorry. Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. So, this guy gets sentenced, Chauvin, that is, he gets sentenced in about 8 weeks, a little less than 8 weeks from now, okay? The judge is going to sentence him, right? How would you feel, Nicole Juergens, if he gets the minimum sentence for the crimes that he's been found guilty of? And second part to the question, how do you think I should feel?
How we feel, again, is all of our own choice, right? Mm-hmm. But number one, no matter what he gets sentenced to, the fact that he's the first one to actually get sentenced, that's a win. That's a show that a transition is happening. However long it has taken, however much has been needed, that is a first win. If he only gets a minimum sentence, I would feel very saddened, just as I expect you would. You would feel like it's criminal, right? Because if the tables were turned and it was the other way around, a black guy shooting a white guy, they would get full sentence, 100%. And I think the thing is that everybody is starting to realize that. And they, again, like we said, you and I, we don't see this, but there obviously is a vast majority of the world that we don't know that has these ideas of how the world is, and that somehow we're different if we have different color skin. And the really sad part is that I was watching a video of how a sheriff, and I don't remember what county this was, but in Minneapolis, was trained, and they use these training programs that are basically like militia programs, right? And they were showing a day at the training program, and the program was basically about just shoot. Like, you protect yourself, you keep yourself safe, you don't, and it's like, I felt nervous, on edge, scared, angry, just sitting and watching that video of that 5 minutes of a course that these cops are taking. But my point is that this is the issue. This is the problem, is we're allowing this to happen. We're allowing these kind of people to teach our cops to start our cops off already on the wrong foot. I mean, they think that I feel like cops think that they wield all power with no accountability. And so that means they get to do whatever they want. That's how I feel. And I know it's not true. I'm sure there's great cops out there. I'm sure there's wonderful cops. But when you hear everything that's happening in the news and you see this day in and day out, that's how it feels to me. And that hurts me because, like I said, I feel like they should be even more accountable. They should be even better. They should be, striving to always make the right move. You know that movie? Did you see Bridesmaids?
Mhm.
And the cop on there, he's just like this sweet guy, right? This little town cop, and he's always trying to do the right thing, and he's pulling her over because she didn't have a tail light, and he's like, damn it, this is like the fourth time I pulled you over, like fix your tail light. But that's how a cop should be. Like, he or she should be in this position to serve, not in this position because, I mean, you see ads out here, right? Oh, you can make all this money and you get all this overtime and so I feel like the position has become one of, well, this is great, I'll become a cop after school because it's great money. I get, great benefits, and I get to be ultimately respected, but not really people who really just want to be a cop because they want to serve. I think it started there. It starts there. And I guess maybe this is where, and I haven't read a lot about it, but where the whole defunding movement has come from, right? Is that we just keep adding more and more money into cops, firemen, and into that, I don't know, institution of all of that. And we can see that there's been negatives to that. I feel like whoever the PR person is for the defunding movement, though, like really dropped the ball, because I feel like that's such a bad name, because I think their premise for that movement is really great ideas. Like, it's not necessarily taking money from cops or firemen, if I have this right, but it's about adding more money back into the communities that they've been taking away. Each city, they have their budgets and they've been taking money away, and they've been putting more and more into cops and security and safety. But are we safer? I don't think so. And taking it away from recreation centers and personal play spaces, and places where kids and people growing up can actually go to be safe and not commit crimes and learn, and educational centers. I feel like the defunding movement really has that right. Like, yes, let's start supporting our communities so that we don't have these issues, instead of just constantly focusing on after we have these issues and let's go beat somebody. But when they call it defunding, you instantly, now you're just like super divisive. Oh no, you can't take money away from cops. I feel like the PR person like super dropped the ball there, and maybe somebody can explain it better to me. But if they had a better name, I think it would have been way better. Like, instead of defunding, but like supporting your community, something, anything. But I feel like, to get back to your original question, yes, I think if he gets the minimum, I don't know what you should feel, but I think you will feel sad. But I think you also have to look at the win, that he did get convicted. This is the first time. It's the first time. And does that make it right? No, it doesn't fucking make it right. Like, what these people are doing, no, that is not right. But it needs to be looked at an entire systemic issue. There needs to be accountability. There needs to be better training. These training programs teaching them like they're in the militia when you're trying to serve a community is not it. It is not okay. And it has to start all the way from the bottom and build its way up.
Okay, so I have mentally jotted down 4 points. The first one would be your use of the example of the cop in Bridesmaids. I thought that was interesting, and here's why I thought that was interesting. Because that cop was interested in a romantic relationship with that girl.
Mm-hmm.
So all that I was thinking when you used that example was, you think that cop would have treated me that way? Am I getting away with the broken tail light 4 times, and so forth and so on? You don't have to answer that. That was rhetorical. The answer is absolutely not.
No, not
Yes.
necessarily. In
Stop,
Bridesmaid,
Nicole.
he was
Stop.
so sweet
Stop.
and cute. Come
Oh,
on.
he was a nice guy, and he was a nice guy to a woman that he wanted to smash. So there you go.
Okay,
The
perhaps.
For sure. The second thing, if I let me see, cops. So one thing that frustrates me to no end, and I actually took part in a documentary that a friend of a friend is putting together. I took part in this about 3 weeks ago and did an interview. And I said something that I think may have pissed a couple people off in the panel and so forth, but who gives a shit? Um, I hate when I hear, there's a couple bad apples. There's a couple bad apples. 99% of cops are good. Give me an effing break. There's not 99% of any profession that's good. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, if they're all so good, and they're also just, and they're also, full of integrity, why do they never, ever, ever tell on one another? What made this trial with Derek Chauvin such an anomaly is because officers testified against him, namely the chief of police, who happened to be black, but still, you never see that. You never see officers say, hell no, we don't train this shit. We don't train people to kneel on the necks of citizens for 9 minutes and choke them out. They had use of force experts that were police officers saying, no way, this guy was out of his mind. Like, that's nothing that ever is involved in any sort of training. So if all these police officers are so good, and let me say, I've only had one bad experience with police officers in my life. And that was a black guy, by the way. That was a black officer in Inglewood, California. And as many times as I've been pulled over and as many tickets as I've had since I've been 16 years old, I've had officers who are super cold and, they don't want to chat it up with you and they just want to write you the ticket and keep it moving. But I've never had anybody want to pull me out of the car and, get me all, jacked up and embarrassed on the street and all that kind of stuff. No, I've never had that before. And I've actually had some white officers who were actually really gracious to me and let me go on things that I definitely knew I did, like speed or run through a stop sign or
Tell
something
'em how
like
many
that.
speeding tickets you have.
Oh, you don't even want to know.
Tell them.
I, honest to God, got 6 in 1 year. I got 6 in 1 year, and I did this thing called trial by written declaration, where you actually just fill out paperwork saying this is why I shouldn't have the ticket and so forth. And I probably shouldn't tell this over the podcast just in case we end up with more than 5 fans at some point. um, you get off 9 out of 10 times because officers really only want to respond when they have to go to court, because in court they get overtime. They don't get overtime for filling out the paperwork, to dispute your written declaration. So anyway, because I'm so smart and I know how to game the ticket system, but I don't get tickets anymore. Not usually. So anyway, back to my point.
Well, you haven't been going anywhere anymore.
Well,
So
I
there's
mean,
that.
in the last 5 years, not just pandemic time. Um, I probably have one ticket in the last 5 years. Now it's for making a U-turn in a business district, which who in the hell knows you're not supposed to make a U-turn in a business district? Like, what test is that on? But anyway, I digress. I wish more officers would break through that blue wall of theirs, the blue wall of silence, and start talking about these guys who they know for sure are just freaking poison on the street. And they're poisoning the name of good police officers, because there are a lot of good police officers. I have friends who are police officers in many different cities around Southern California and otherwise. I love the police. If some shit goes down here in Arcadia, I'm the first one calling 911. I'm like, get here quick, get here with your guns out, do whatever you got to do. I love police officers, and anyone and by the way, statistically, African Americans overwhelmingly love police officers. They love having police because a lot of times in unfortunately poor social economic communities tend to be, a lot of minorities. A lot of times they want police there because they want to be safe. They don't want to get robbed and, mugged and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I wish more people would, more cops would break that blue wall and do the right thing. You're not a snitch because you're trying to clean up a dirty organization. You're not a snitch because you're trying to save lives and make the streets safer, and trying to repair your good name. Um, yeah, you're just not a snitch. So anyway, the third thing that I wanted to hit was defunding, the defunding of police.
Can I
I
tell you?
disagree.
Can I tell you a story? Because you were talking about your run-in with the police officer. Can I tell you one of mine real quick before you get to
Sure.
defunding? Because
Sure.
that's a good discussion. But I was thinking about this because I've had quite a few run-ins as well, mostly just fine. But I will never forget this situation with a white, older male officer. I was in college and I was driving my hoopty, my Oldsmobile. It was my first car. And my boyfriend at the time, we were downtown Minneapolis, actually uptown Minneapolis, and we're going to TCF Bank. I don't even know if they have TCFs anymore. And I was going to drop him off because he had to go in to just pick up some cash, right? So at this bank, you pull. It's a one-way street, so we're on the left-hand side of the street, and here's the bank, and right in front of it, like right here, is a red curb. But then right behind it is a meter. And so I pull up and that meter's open. I pull right into the meter and he gets out and he goes in and he goes and gets his money and he's walking out and I can see him coming in through the window. And so as he's coming, I just, I roll forward into the red curb, right? And he's coming out. And right as he hits the door, all of a sudden this cop on a bike, like not a motorcycle, a bike, on the sidewalk next to my car, pulls up to my window like out of nowhere. I don't even know where this guy come from. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Like literally full tilt rage on me. And I was like, what the he's like, "This is a red. Do you see this is a red sidewalk right here. You cannot park in." I was like, I literally just pulled forward to get it. And Nick, my boyfriend at the time, stops because he's like, "What's happening?" And I look at him, I'm like, "Get in the car." And he's like walking around getting, and this guy is just like rage on me. I was like, "Okay, bye." And I was like, "What the hell?" And this is the kind of attitude and demeanor where, and maybe this is where I got the idea that a lot of cops are like this, is just like, you cannot have those kind of anger issues in that profession. And yet it appears that a lot of cops do. And I can only imagine it comes from their training or lack of training or whatever it is, but it's not okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's their training. I think a lot of cops are ex bullied individuals, and they picked a profession that they could sort of exact revenge on life and the circumstances they come from. But anyway, back to defunding the police. I think it's a huge misnomer uh what people think defunding the police means. Defunding the police does not mean taking away money from the police.
So
It
it's a
means
bad name. Yes. Like
no,
who
it's
is a
it's it's
PR
fine.
person?
There's been several police organizations that have been defunded over the course of years. In fact, there was one big one in your state of Minnesota, and I wish I could remember what city it was and so forth, because I watched a 60 minutes piece or something on this lady who sort of spearheaded it, and they went from a totally corrupt police unit or whatever department to being one of the most like highly reviewed and revered police cities. So what defunding the police means is, and I'm no expert, but this is what I understand defunding the police to mean. um, they take away money in order to rebuild. So it's, say, LAPD, and this number is obviously not even close to accurate, but say they're a $100 million a year police department. What you do is, if you find that LAPD is so egregious in their criminal behavior, or how they're corrupt or so forth, and how they're dealing with the civilian population and so forth, how they're actually policing. If you find that that is so woefully bad, then what they do is they literally will fire all the officers. They will fire the entire, bureaucratic administration behind the officers, chiefs, all those different titles that don't actually police the streets. They run things behind the scenes, and they rebuild it from the ground up. So if they defunded LAPD, we're not going to lose LAPD. We're not going to be a city without a police department. We're going to be a city reconstructing a police department. So I am fully on board with defunding the police, and the people who are trying to sort of perpetuate this lie that defunding the police means we don't want police. They're literally doing that for the same reason that the news does what it does, trying to scare you and so forth, so that they can gin up support for, you know, your specific agenda, which would be to keep funding the same police in the same manner and the same behavior and so forth and so on, right? So defunding the police is an activity that requires a lot of courage and intelligence and spine, really. And it needs to be done because the state of policing in America, pretty much across the board, is archaic. It really is. And you have to study even how the origins of policing in America. And it had a lot to do with slavery and keeping slaves in line and meting out punishment and so forth to non-white populations in the country. So policing in its origin really has, in and of itself, the systemic foundation of racism, and it really does. It is very clear in my mind, and I know that obviously I can't speak for you and anybody else, but it's very clear in my mind that there are at least two Americas, and there are at least two justice systems. And the fourth point that I wanted to get to, and it's amazing that I remember all 4 points, is you'd be very surprised how I'd feel if Derek Chauvin was given the minimum sentence. I wouldn't feel anything at all, because to be quite honest with you, I have an expectation to be disappointed. I really do. So when you say you feel like, or you think I would be sad, no, I just think it would be another slap in the face. It would be another fuck you to Black people. We don't have to treat you like us. We don't have to mete out the same discipline and justice and integrity and morality to you people. So here you go. Here's your win, like you called it. It's a win. He got convicted. That ain't no win. Not to me. Not yet. It's a step towards a win. But if the judge comes back and says you're getting 45 years, which is the maximum sentence by law there in Minnesota for these particular crimes, then I'm like, okay, this is a win. But this does not equate to 400 years of vindication. This just means at least we're trying to start and begin to move in the right direction.
Well, of course, you can't vindicate 400 years in one action, but it's the first time, I'm not saying that it's okay, but it's the first time that they actually are being held accountable. It's something. This is how change happens, right? And hopefully 50 years from now, I look back and we'll think, wow, that's how life used to be. Like, and now we don't give a crap like what color everyone is, and I people are like, oh, only 50 years. Like, yeah, I hope so. That's a long time still from, like you said, 400 years. Like it's about time. It's
but
tired.
What do you think the conversation was in 1971?
Were they having conversations in 1971 about this?
When I say the conversation, I mean, what do you think the majority of whites were feeling, and what do you think the majority of Blacks were feeling about the state of affairs in America with regards to just justice, policing, equality, and so forth? I tend to believe, I venture to guess, that it was probably about the same as it is today.
Yes, I bet you're right.
maybe
I
a
bet you're right.
tad bit better, but I bet it was pretty much the same outside of, fashion and the way cars looked and so forth. I mean,
Hippies,
it was that.
hippies,
Yeah, I mean,
lots
we
of
still got
hippies.
our hippies today, but I bet you the thought process was about the same.
So you think 50 years from now it'll be the same?
I hope not. I hope not. 50 years from now, if I'm still alive, God willing, I'll be a super old man. I'll be 94 years old or 93, but close to 94 years old. I hope that at that point, my kids who will have kids and maybe even their kids will have a kid or so, are living a different life than I've lived. And my life has been fairly good, like I said, as far as it goes, with regards to policing and so forth, and overt racism. I've certainly experienced my fair share of stuff, but growing up in a place that's fairly progressive, especially when compared to the middle of the country, it's probably been a somewhat easier existence. But I hope that my kids are not having a conversation with a white person like we're having right now. I mean, that would just be a total and complete disappointment if this same conversation that we're having right now is even near relevant 50 years from now.
So when is he going to be sentenced?
It was 8 weeks from the day he was convicted. So I can't remember what day that was last week, but I feel like it was like Wednesday or Thursday or something.
Does that mean he's in jail right now until then?
Yeah,
Or is
he's
he?
in jail. The judge revoked any type of bail.
And I thought if cops go to jail, they get killed or something
No,
in
no,
jail.
no.
Isn't that
Well,
the?
maybe in general population, but they've separated him from the general population. So he's essentially in isolation,
Mm.
and I assume will be for whatever amount of time he gets. Yeah.
All right. That's a lot to think about. It's a lot to digest. Obviously, we're going to go over and over this issue from all different angles, and we'll talk about the sentencing when it happens in 8 weeks. But now I'm depressed. So now I need a nap.
That's because you're 42 years old and I'm 43 years old. A good midday nap nowadays is just like, man, that's the tits, dude. That's the greatest ever, dude. A nice little hour-long sleep in the middle of the day.
I tell my kids that they're 9 and 7. I'm like, you look tired. You should just take a nap. Oh, I cannot take a nap. How could I take a nap? It's morning. Whenever the sun's out, it's morning.
I literally look at my kids like they are from another planet when it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, why do you even want to be up? I should have been in bed an hour and a half ago, dude. This was like, are you crazy? Want to be up? And then I have to remember back when in those days when I would literally try and stay up till the sun came up, just to do it.
Yes, because it's
Why
cool.
not?
That's what my kids say. Like, oh, I want to stay up till 3 a.m. I mean, they can't stay up past 10, but they want to stay up till 3 a.m. Like, okay, all right. One of these days.
Let me tell you right now that if Michael Moore is up at 3 a.m., somebody has died. I have some severe digestion going on or something like that is keeping me from falling asleep, or I cannot figure out how to pay rent. Something is keeping me up is the point, Nicole Jurgens.
There's a fourth thing. If you're up at 3 a.m.
Definitely not sex.
You're raging.
Oh.
Even at 40.
I have to be in Las Vegas with 4 of my closest friends and trying to literally blow the city up. I have to be trying to destroy Las Vegas.
Don't let anyone tell you can't rage at 40, because you can.
Hey, but even that was a couple years. We don't know. We may go now and just like sit by the pool and just be like, we'll take a coconut water and a banana.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. We've been napping since.
I don't know what I'm capable of nowadays. I'm telling you, man, I have grown to love sleep. You know, that should actually be our next podcast. We should just cut this one off right now and just talk about what is
We'll
it
leave them with
like
a
to be.
teaser. We'll leave them
Yeah,
with it. This is a teaser, guys. You guys want to know more about our sleep? Pay attention to our next podcast.
we're gonna help you understand why you can't sleep at 42, at 43 years old. We're gonna help
We're
you
gonna
understand all the changes you've been through since your 20s.
perfect.
Be prepared for that one, people.
It's good. It's coming. All right.
Highly uncircumcised at gmail.com.
Let us know
Just
about your
tell
sleep
us,
patterns.
let us know. Let us know. Do you have a lot of gas? Do you, is your husband or wife constantly trying to wake you up for the midnight, pickle tickle?
Oh,
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, does that still go on? I mean, I've been married for 19 years. 8 o'clock at night, man, I'm a lion. I'm like, wow.
9
9 o'clock,
o'clock, dead.
9 o'clock, I'm like a little house cat. And I'm like, 10 o'clock, I'm playing possum, dude.
Oh, we got a lot to look forward to, folks.
We got a lot
to look forward to.
to.
We'll see you next time.